For anyone new to BTS or just starting to look into the concept known as the Bangtan Universe, it can definitely seem really overwhelming. You may be wondering why there sometimes seems to be a storyline running through the BTS music videos, or have come across other media such as the Save Me webtoon or the Notes 1 book, tagged with a little BU symbol. There are some really good summaries out there which give you a really good overview of the events in this fictional universe Big Hit Entertainment and BTS have created, but quite often I've found some bias creeps into these in the form of unconfirmed theories. Since the information is fed to us like puzzle pieces for us to fit together, it is really easy to take these theories as proven fact, even if there is conflicting evidence. What I aim to do in this series is give you a breakdown of every single event we know of which happens in the Bangtan Universe with as little bias as possible. I will include exactly where we are told about the event, and I highly recommend doing your own research off the back of this. My paraphrased narration cannot do the original text justice. It's an incredibly engaging read, clearly written by a skilled writer. Please do not take everything I say as gospel. While I have spent a considerable amount of time researching, I'm not perfect, and my sources for translations, for example, might not be 100% accurate. Since much of the content is originally in Korean, a language notorious for nuances which are hard to translate into English, I may have got things mixed up. Throughout the course of this series, if you notice something that doesn't sound quite right, please do let me know so I can correct it. Any imagery I use in this video to supplement the narration may or may not be directly related. Scenes from music videos might look like they match up, but I will put a little warning somewhere on the screen to remind you that any links have not been confirmed, or even that the footage isn't even supposed to be part of the BU. If themes of violence, abuse, neglect, trauma, suicide or abandonment are difficult topics for you to navigate, please take extreme caution before exploring this universe any further. The themes can get pretty dark. The members' real names are used, but the events that happen in this fictional universe are exactly that, fictional. None of this has happened to the boys of BTS in real life, so please don't get confused or panic. Treat the BU as an alternate universe. While I will do my best to keep things in chronological order, there's the small annoying detail of the existence of multiple timelines, thanks to Seokjin being stuck in a time loop. More on that later, but things get a little hard to follow after the 11th of April year 22, since we can't be absolutely sure which timeline everything fits into. Before we get stuck in, I'll give you a list of the main BU related media this information has been sourced from so that you can bear it in mind later. Most of it is time-stamped, where the year is simply given as year 22, for example, and any links between music videos or songs and the time-stamped events we have can only be speculation until Big Hit confirms otherwise. I will give you the timestamp of each event where available, and since the years can get really busy with events, I will only announce the year if it's changed since the previous event. The story so far spans across 13 years, from year 9 to year 22. There are music videos across many BTS eras which seem to follow the same timeline, but something to note is that only music videos tagged with the BU symbol in the description should be regarded as part of this storyline. Many people try to find links in every music video, but unless Big Hit explicitly tell us it should be linked, we shouldn't really be looking. I want to start off with a quote from the Wings concept book, which struck me as important when thinking about theories in the Bangtan Universe, so that you can keep it in the back of your mind as we continue through this series. Whether in the story of Hwayang Yonghwa or in reality, BTS faced many difficulties and worries, yet they became one and came this far. The boy moved forward, and he shall continue to move forward along the path called the never-ending question of the youth. Since the storyline is already incredibly long, in this video I will only be giving a really quick overview of the role each member plays in the story to give some context to the events we'll learn about later on in this series. This is more of an introduction to the universe, and if you're still interested in finding out exactly what happens, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Seokjin's mother died when he was young, and he was sent to America to live with his grandmother by an emotionally distant father. He returns to his home city, which is when he meets the other characters in this story, named after the members of BTS. He is heavily intimidated by his father and the principal of their school to follow orders, and in doing so he is forced to betray his friends, seemingly driving them apart. Later on in the story, he discovers that his friends' lives took a turn for the worst, and he's thrown backwards in time, being told if he does things correctly, he can save all his friends. His character is pivotal in this story, as he remembers past timelines, whereas the others seemingly do not. Although it is hinted that some of them may catch glimpses of the past, or the future, it's left frustratingly unclear. Seokjin eventually meets a girl after she drops a book, and he uses this book to learn that she loves smeraldo flowers. It's worth noting that there are two flowers referenced heavily in this story, lilies and the fictional smeraldo. Seokjin is effectively stuck in a time loop until he can find a way to save everyone. Namjoon grew up in extreme poverty with his family and had to juggle several part-time jobs to help provide for them, especially when his father was in and out of hospital with a serious illness. For most of the story, however, he's living alone in a storage container, supporting his friends as best he can. Yoongi's mother also died when he was young in a house fire. She always encouraged Yoongi to play the piano, and as a result he feels a mixture of comfort and anger towards the instrument. Yoongi is expelled from school as an indirect result of Seokjin's actions while obeying orders from the principal, and he consequently struggles with his direction in life and severely self-destructive behaviour. In most timelines of this story, Yoongi attempts suicide. Hoseok was abandoned at an amusement park by his mother when he was around 9 years old and sent to live at an orphanage. She gave him a chocolate bar and told him to cover his eyes and count to 10, but when he opened his eyes again, she was gone. While his age during this event is not explicitly mentioned, we can work it out from notes in Map of the Soul Persona, which say he left the orphanage when he turned 19, and in the book The Notes 1, he says the orphanage was his home for 10 years. Hoseok later suffers from presumed narcolepsy, which is actually revealed to be Munchausen syndrome. This is a mental illness where the patient fakes the symptoms of another illness, which in this case was narcolepsy. He finds a passion in dancing, and after an unfortunate injury that meant he had to take a break, he did some soul-searching. Jimin's story for me is the most interesting since so much of it still remains a mystery. As a child, there was an incident at an arboretum which caused him to faint and resulted in him being in and out of hospital for the rest of the story. This event apparently changed everything for Jimin, but we still don't know what it is. His parents see him as a burden due to this illness and force him to stay in hospital for much longer than necessary. He runs into Hoseok at the hospital on occasion, and eventually his friends break him out. Taeyoung's mother abandoned him and his sister when his father became physically abusive towards them. Unfortunately, this meant that Taeyoung had to endure since he and his sister had nowhere else to go. Later in life he finds passion in graffiti and is frequently running from the police as a result. In at least one timeline, he snaps while his father is beating his sister, and he kills his father with a broken bottle, resulting in his arrest for homicide. On a trip to the beach with his friends, he also climbs to the top of a construction tower and jumps off into the sea. It's unknown whether this was an act of attempted suicide or not. Jungkook's father abandoned his family, and ever since, Jungkook is convinced he was to blame. This results in a lot of self-hatred and suicidal thoughts, which Jungkook struggles with and hides from his friends. In at least one timeline, he climbs to the top of a building and jumps off, committing suicide. Later in the story, he is also involved in a car accident, which results in a stay at the hospital where he meets a girl. He becomes paranoid as he remembers parts of the accident, and it's hinted that it was Seokjin who hit him. This story seems to serve multiple purposes, and I'm of the opinion that the way you interpret this story is whatever is most relevant to your own life. It follows 7 boys as they navigate one of the most difficult phases of growing up, as they discover themselves and learn how to survive in the adult world. It also addresses complex emotions such as love and guilt, dark themes such as suicide and loss, and places a lot of importance on the role of friendship and companionship. These messages are reflected in much of their discography, and you could almost align the story to how their musical journey has progressed and developed. The boy moved forward. If you stuck around through this video, thanks for watching. I've spent many hours researching the story from my own curiosity, and I'm excited to be able to share the entire timeline as we know it with you. In part 2, we will go through the events from year 9 to year 18, which kind of serve as a prologue to the story since the bulk of the events happen from year 19 onwards and span over the remaining 3 years. Hopefully I'll see you there.